Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is John Mason, and welcome to Downtown with John Mason. My guest today is writer, community activist, poet, Harry Mitchell. Harry, thanks for being on our show. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Tell me a little, let's go right into your life story. Tell me a little bit about yourself in your journey with Hartford, in Hartford.
Well, like most of its citizens, I was born here, raised here, grew up here for the most part till, when you get to be a young man, you venture out and start traveling. But my journey in regards to activism, I guess you could say, started sometime in the late 90s through some friends of mine who had been longtime activists on things like civil rights and welfare reform and things.
What were you doing at the time?
At that time, I was working at Clement's Place, I believe. Mm-hmm. And I was doing, I was a maintenance supervisor, mm-hmm. and that pretty much was it. Mm-hmm. I've always been inspired to write, mm-hmm. never gotten anything published, but mm-hmm. I've written a few things, and I also had attended Manchester Community College mm-hmm. In their culinary program, mm-hmm. which I'd finished, and I later went back and taught there one semester in a program that was for students with mental disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Now, what triggered your community activism? What was it? One incident? Was it frustration with something? At the time, where were you living?
I just always been rebellious, mm-hmm. so mm-hmm. I've always just had a knack for going against the grain. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
give me an example of that. Like, what would be an example of you going up against the grain? Like, did you give the teachers a hard time?
I always gave teachers a hard
time.
Very opinionated. Mm-hmm. Lost a lot of jobs mm-hmm. by going against mm-hmm. bosses and mm-hmm. the establishment. Mm-hmm. But later I learned that wasn't the way to go. Mm-hmm. But as of recently, as an adult, I learned to fight causes that really meant something to me, mm-hmm. not just being contrary. Mm-hmm. So
what are your causes?
First of all,
how old are you?
I'm 51 years old.
51. Okay, so when does this start happening?
Well, the major activism started roughly 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was working for Greater Hartford Arts Council, taking care of the property, which now houses the Conference of Churches mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. over on Farmington Avenue. Mm-hmm. The backside would be Nile Street.
Yeah.
And I got sick.
Mm-hmm. Sick of the job or sick?
No, I got physically sick.
Sick, yeah. What kind of sickness?
I had a tumor on my spine, mm-hmm. which was something I had when I was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. However, I wasn't aware that it would grow back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It grew back. I had surgery, and I was left paralyzed for roughly a period of about 1 year.
1 year. And you left paralyzed in a wheelchair?
Yes,
left paralyzed?
In a wheelchair.
And so how do you get around? Like, were you living, did you have a wife? Did you have a caretaker? How were you getting around with?
I had a good woman at the time who happens to be presently my fiance.
Okay.
And she pushed me around and...
In a wheelchair?
Yes, but during that period, I couldn't work. Mm-hmm. And I had applied for disability, so mm-hmm. I wasn't able to get any income.
So let me stop you there. So you're going along.
I'm going along.
Life is wonderful, good. And then you find out, boom, you have this tumor. They operate, and you wake up paralyzed.
Yes.
Okay. And so what changes for you mentally?
Mentally, I was a mess.
Yeah.
Know.
Now, are you drinking, or do you start doing stuff to?
Well, I drank before that.
Okay.
And I partied before.
What's your favorite
that.
drink, by the way? What
was it? Because I don't drink anymore.
Okay, all right.
But at the time, I was a vodka man.
Okay. So this brings you into a tailspin. You're drinking more.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm drinking more. The pain medication they give me, I was popping them like Skittles, and I was upset and I was depressed.
Upset about?
Well, because of the fact that I was told that I probably would be disabled for the rest of my life.
Now, are you a religious man prior to that? Are you?
I've always have been, but to the fact that maybe I didn't exercise my faith.
Yeah. And so at that point, are you saying, damn you, God, or are you?
No, I never said that. Yeah. But it was more or less feeling sorry for myself.
No anger toward God?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just what's your thinking about the illness, though?
My thinking was, geez, it happened again. Can I?
But at 14, it wasn't. You were in a wheelchair.
I'm 14.
You just knew you had it.
At 14, I the same thing happened, but I recovered in a matter of a couple months.
But you weren't paralyzed at 14?
Yes.
Oh, you were?
Yes.
In a wheelchair at 14?
Yes.
And you came out of that?
But I stayed in the hospital through the whole recuperation time.
So how did you get through the year? Like, what did you? How did you?
The year.
When I
was 14, or
4 years ago, this happened. You said
that year it became rough. As I was saying, because of the injury, I could no longer work, which means I couldn't pay my bills. I had no medical insurance, and I didn't know what to do next. Luckily, I was able to get unemployment, but that wasn't enough to maintain a household.
So you were renting an apartment at the time?
I was renting a place in Bowes Park in the northwest end of Hartford.
So what happens to the apartment? Do you lose the apartment?
Lose the apartment.
And where do you go?
Well, after I lost the apartment, I made some rather bad choices due to the alcohol and depression. And
what kind of choices?
Well, let's just say I had some issues with anger. And I wound up doing close to a year in Osborne Correctional Facility.
So let me get this straight. So you're in a wheelchair, homeless, in prison?
In between that, I took physical therapy. By the time I went to prison, I was walking with a cane.
Okay.
It didn't take me but close to a year's time to get back on my feet, which I wasn't supposed to, but I was determined. I didn't want to go that route. I didn't want to be disabled. And, like I said, by the grace of God.
Do you see it as a miracle, or do you just see it as a natural progression of you got better?
Well, I see everything as a miracle. I see waking up in the morning as a miracle. The fact that I'm here today with all I've been through in my youth, I was, So you did a year at Osborne in prison? I did about a year, close to a year in Osborne.
And you... How did you survive that?
Well, actually, it helped me. I healed. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't smoking. It gave me a time to get peace of mind and think about what to do next. Once I got over the initial depression of what I had been through, I said, okay, what's next?
Did you get help there? Was there counseling? Because you hear all kinds of stories.
Well, a little bit of counseling, but the whole thing with the system is if you go in, anybody that's depressed or say you got some kind of problem, first thing they do is give you a label and start shoving medication down your throat. So that's what they did to me.
So you got out of prison, and you go where?
I got out of prison. I had nowhere to go.
And where do you go?
The first few weeks, I lived in a basement at my fiance's mom's house. Stayed there for a while. But it was freezing in the winter, and it wasn't a basement that was fixed up. It was just the basement.
Just the basement, yeah.
And I said to her, I have to do something. I can't continue to do this, and I don't want you to do this either. So what I wound up doing was, I figured, well, I'm a drinker.
You're still drinking at the time?
I was still drinking at the time. I checked into a rehab place.
Over here in Hartford on Coventry Street?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I checked in there just to give me some time to figure out what's next. And I also thought that, because of that, I might get some sort of help. In regards to getting housed again and what have you, but that wasn't.
How was the rehab?
It was. I mean, it was okay.
Yeah, but I mean, are you still drinking or?
No. But that really didn't deter me.
Okay, so you went 30 days. You came out and went where? Then
I went to a recovery facility, and I stayed there for as long as I could, and they had to let me go as well. So.
Because you're still drinking.
Well, that's not why they let me go. Okay. My time was just up, and I hadn't.
So where do you go from after that?
Plan. Well, then I started couch surfing.
Couch surfing, yeah.
With a few friends, and
that doesn't last long.
No, it doesn't last long. You know, the best way to lose a friend is
sleep
to live
on their couch.
Yeah. And that didn't turn out too good.
Yeah.
So I had finally said to myself, and I had heard other people say on the street, "Oh, if you go into the shelter, they help you find an apartment." And everything. And at the time, I had already applied for disability.
Yeah. I
had no income, but I knew at some point, if my disability case was approved, then
So you're not in a wheelchair. You're using a cane. You go into a shelter,
Hartford Shelter. A shelter.
Yeah.
I brought what I could with me.
What was that experience like?
Well, to me, it was like being in jail with a day pass.
Okay.
That
bad.
At first, but I got used to
dangerous,
it.
Felt.
Well, not really so much as dangerous. It's like anything else. If you keep your mouth shut and mind your own business, you're all right. It's just you have to watch your belongings at all times, and things like that.
Are you sleeping next to a guy you don't know? Do you have your own cubicle?
Yeah, I'm sleeping on the floor.
The
first shelter I went to was the McKinney shelter.
Yeah.
And I slept on the floor there until I was eligible for a bed, because people come in and out.
How long did you sleep on the floor?
Probably a week or two.
And then
until the bed opened up.
Then you got a bed.
But if you don't show up that night, you lose it. So I made
and those, they work like what? You have to be there at 3 o'clock, or you have to be
roughly 4.
Yeah, I had heard it's a deterrent to work, because you have to be there, and if you're not there at a certain time.
Well, if you have a job, they make allowances for that.
Okay. So how long are you in the shelter?
Oh, I stayed in the shelter system roughly a year and a half, 2 years.
And your belongings are where in the shelter?
I just bring them with me wherever I go. When you have a bed, you have a locker.
Yeah, underneath the bed.
But if you don't have a bed, you got all your stuff in your bag, and you just keep it with you. It can be your pillow.
What do you do when you take a shower? You take it with you?
Take it with you.
Yeah. So
unless you trust somebody enough to watch it, I didn't.
So through that experience, how do you view that experience, and what did you learn from it? What did you come away with?
It humbled me greatly, because before that, I had good jobs, making pretty good money. Did what I want, bought what I want. I was, for the most part, pretty arrogant. And at that time, I was in my 40s still. So,
well, what's your view on the whole shelter system?
Well, the whole shelter system, I do believe it's necessary, because people do need it. And it's not so much the shelter system itself; it's the whole system in regards to how the issues of the homeless are handled. At first, that's what started my advocacy, being homeless. There's some things I didn't like. I didn't like the way some of the people in the shelters treated the clients and things like that. So I got involved with a group, and we started up a newspaper called Beat of the Street, which is Hartford's only publication that deals with issues of the homeless. That's what got me started in my advocacy in regards to that. And then I started getting involved in any and everything that was available. Journey Home.
Journey Home is what?
Journey Home is a homeless advocacy group that mainly focuses on housing. They're located on Main Street in Hartford. I got involved with them. I got put on their consumer advisory.
You know what?
board.
I hate to cut you off. We got less than a minute here. Just wrap this up about the whole homeless experience for me, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about your activism career. But looking back on this experience, what do you come away with? What do you say about the way it's run? What do you say about how what you went through?
Well, I think that at this point, the way it's run is okay, but it could be a lot better. But it doesn't start with simply the shelters themselves. It goes as far as the municipalities and our gubernatorial legislation.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and we'll pick up right on that.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Harry Mitchell. Thank you. We're back. I'm John Mason, and we're with Harry Mitchell, activist here in Hartford. Harry, we left off before the break. You were talking about social agencies, social service agencies in Hartford. We were talking about your experience being homeless, overcoming I don't know, illness for almost a year. You were in a wheelchair, you said. How do you solve the problem? How do you make things easier for people who are struggling? And the perception is that it's not a real problem, but being in Hartford, we see it is a problem. There's a lot of people who need help. So what do you suggest? Say you were the mayor. What would you do? What are some of the things you would do, Mayor Mitchell?
One of the things I think that needs to be done is have more working incentive programs for people. The way the system is run now in regards to advocacy and help, I mean, it's fine. I know people need help, but I believe people need a helping hand, not a continuous handout, because it leaves people completely bereft of any ambition, and there's no need for them to try to pursue a better quality of life.
Give me an example. Give me an example of
Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. Most of the programs are designed that people don't have to do anything. You can get housing and not pay any rent for, in some cases, for a lifetime. There's no cutoff point.
Where do I sign up for that? That's what no, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
I mean, there's no cutoff point.
Yeah.
I mean,
so you're saying make it so that the person who's getting help has to give back something while they're getting help, or at the end of 3 months, at the end of 6 months,
6 months,
something.
a couple years. I mean,
why is the system like that, in your opinion?
I guess in a sense of showing compassion to people, and I believe most of it is about grant money.
And how does the grant money work? Give me an idea.
Well, I mean, I don't know the complete ins and outs of it, but I know every year every group applies for a certain amount of money to house people and to, things for food and shelters and all of that. And the more people that are needy, your money continues to flow in as far as a group. My thing is this: I know people need help, but where does the real help begin? When people receive these services, if they don't see no end point to it, it's like, well, why should I do anything when I'm constantly being given stuff.
Right. There's no incentive.
Like, say, for instance, we have all these blighted buildings around.
Right.
You can go to the shelters or even halfway houses or what have you, and only recruit people who really want to do this. If you really want to change your life, if you really want to work, there's a program called Youth Builders where they took old houses and buildings and renovated and refurbished them, taught them a construction trade.
Yeah.
I say the same type of program. Have an accredited, reputable, state licensed construction contractor that may take on these men and women, teach them the skills that they need to refurbish and rebuild some of this blighted housing. And at the same time, it's also a training. So
why isn't there more of that?
I have no idea. That's one of the biggest problems I see. Why continue to just, I mean, because this housing, they can live in it. They can build their own housing. And
I mean, it seems like it would be more costly, though,
it might be more costly for a short period of time,
but you make up for it.
But you make up for it in the end, and then you're giving people who may have been out of work or may have never worked. You're giving them a skill.
Well, why do social services continue to operate this way? I mean, I would think there's plenty of people to help. That there's people lined up that need help. If you help one group and you made them self-sufficient, there's plenty of people behind them looking for the same thing.
I don't know. For some reason, it seems like self-sufficiency has become a dirty word, and that's my biggest problem. I don't understand it. Why do you not want to emancipate people financially and socioeconomically?
And you don't have an answer.
I don't have an answer, and I've been looking for it. I believe in a helping hand so people can get a leg up and put their best foot forward and stand on their own 2 feet. Who doesn't want that? Back in the Clinton era, when they had the welfare to work program, a lot of people who were in that program were mothers who had been used to staying home and collecting a check. And they were told that, if I remember correctly, if I'm wrong, well, But anyway, they had to go to training, get job training in order to continue to get their benefits. A lot of them may have objected in the beginning, but after they started working, getting
self-respect.
Yes. And I know that works for people. Because that's the way life is. You enjoy earning a living, buying your own bread. After a while, when someone is continually giving you something, you can only get what they are giving you. You can never get any more. So my question to people is, do you want more? Do you want to continue to be fed scraps under the table like a dog, or do you want to sit at the table?
And where do you want to sit?
I want to sit at the table.
Yeah, and what do you see? Where do you see your role in the community?
Well, personally, I mean, myself, I'm still. I obviously can't do the things I used to do. That's why, I'm doing the activism and advocacy, and hopefully, as I educate myself, maybe I can use this as a means of gainful employment in some manner in the future. And I'm also currently taking classes at the Hartford Seminary in the Black Ministries program, so that way I have a spiritual and faith grounding in what I do, because getting caught up, we all know in politics it's easy to get caught up. And I want to keep a clear head about me, and I want to do things right. A lot of people seem to think that I forgot my homelessness and what I went through, and I didn't. I still have compassion, but I just see advocacy in a different way.
How is that met by people who are...
Well, for the most part, it's met like I don't care anymore. Like
you seem sometimes angry about, when you have situations where people are getting handouts and
because I know people can do better. And they don't see that it's in a way the system is designed to keep them exactly where they're at.
We've heard that before, yeah.
You know, and I truly believe that. You know, it's constantly making excuses for people. Oh, they had it rough, or they have addiction, and now all these things can be overcome. You have people that come here from war-torn countries that seen atrocities, and even though they get some help from the government, they still manage to make it if they got to work 2 and 3 jobs. You know, you have people that come from major metropolitan areas, L.A., Chicago, you know, who live down the, you know, the streets there, and people make it. You know, you would think, people see Obama being president, you would think almost anything was possible. And when I hear people say how, oh, it's rough in the street, this is Hartford. You know, it's a city, but it's a small one. And, you know, when you have people that come from war-torn countries or major metropolitan areas where high murder rates, and you come from here and say, oh, it's so rough, I can't make it, I don't buy that. And if that makes me a bad guy, then I'm a bad guy. But I believe in people, and I believe there's opportunities out there.
Yeah.
And
let me cut you off. Do you think the city administration hears what people like yourself, the opinion of what you're saying?
I don't think they do. I don't think there's enough people to say what I'm saying. Most people make excuses. You know, like I said, I don't want nobody to get me wrong. I do have compassion, and I do believe people need help. But I also like to see people strengthened. And
self-sufficient, you're saying,
exactly,
on their own, and
exactly. I mean, what's the sense of having these what was originally meant to be a temporary fix has turned into a lifestyle for people. Right. And that's where I have a problem. I mean, you can be in a shelter. For example, I was in there 4 years ago. I've since have an apartment, and I do per diem work and my activism. And I'm trying to focus on raising the bar in whatever I do. I'm 51, but I'm not dead. I can still have a career. But at the same time, there are people who was in that shelter before I got there, and they're still there now.
There's no limit on a shelter.
No, you can go. There's a limit as far as the time you spend in each shelter.
Okay.
But you can do what we call a shelter shuffle, and you go from one shelter to the next shelter to the next shelter. Before you know it, the year is up, and you can start right back where you started. And that can go on for year after year after year after year. Why? What is there to make people not want to continue with that? Yes, there's a shortage of housing, and the waiting lists are long, but a lot of times if you follow the protocol given to you, you can have an apartment. Another problem is a lot of people that get the housing are people that have these problems, mental health issues, addiction. Aren't
able to support or to...
And they get these housing programs, and they fail. They lose it.
They fail. Who fails?
The people that usually get it. When you don't have any problems and you do everything right, you're on the bottom of the list because I guess your need isn't as urgent as someone who has addiction and constantly getting arrested.
So if I had an addiction and I got an apartment and I wasn't able to pay for the apartment, what happens to me? I would assume...
Well, the program you're in takes care of your rent.
Oh, you don't have to pay any rent at all?
No, or maybe a small
percentage,
portion, a percentage depending on if you have income or not.
And you're saying why make the percentage so small?
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying why make it for life.
Yeah.
I'm saying put a cap. I will do this for you if you do this by a certain amount of time, whether it's 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. You know, get some kind of training, take care of your addiction, get help for your mental health issues. Do all this fervently. And after a certain amount of time, you'll be able to stand on your own 2 feet. Not just say, oh, you have a problem here, take this and run with it. I think that's...
And so you're saying people like yourself who work part-time or who have cleaned up or who have made an effort.
And since I got in the shelter system, I was pretty much okay. That was my goal when I got in there, was to get housed again. So I did everything I was supposed to do. I understand everybody isn't as strong, or some people's problems might run deeper, but there's all kinds of help out there. And I don't think it's encouraged enough for people to seek it. And that's the problem. And why should you seek help when you know the worse off you are, the better your chances are getting things for free?
On that note, we got a minute left. Just wrap everything up as far as what you hold for the future for Hartford, where you see Hartford going politically, and what's out there for people, and how people can benefit from living in Hartford.
My thing is,
would you advertise or support more people coming to Hartford, or?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
I would. The whole problem is, what are you coming here for? People have known to migrate here because they know that and I've heard this, they can get something for nothing. Is that the image that we want?
Okay, well, can you leave on a positive note, like something that we can all...
On a positive note, I do think things will get better, as long as there are people like me.
Yeah.
And maybe one day I'll run for office, so.
Okay, all right, the Harry Mitchell story. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We'll catch you next week. This is John Mason with my guest, Harry Mitchell, and that's it. Thank you.